Now, there's been a lot of talk recently about us not liking Doctor Who, despite the fact that we're a channel that's dedicated to Doctor Who. With that in mind, I think this is an appropriate time to review a well-remembered episode from over half a decade ago. Love and Monsters. Shut up! Love and Monsters is one of those episodes that people don't stop talking about. It has debatably made a larger impact on fans than several series finales have, and brings with it an immortal reputation. And for those of you who reckon Love and Monsters isn't Doctor Who, it is Doctor Who, because there's that bit that says David Tennant and Billie Piper in Doctor Who with the Doctor Who music playing, which essentially establishes that you're watching Doctor Who. Let's face it, anything aside from these titles every week is anyone's guess. Apart from the closing titles. In Love and Monsters, we follow a different protagonist by the name of Elton, who tells the story over a vlog, which is used as a framing device for the story. This Dr. Light story is not just mildly different, it is an experiment which is almost unheard of aside from Mission to the Unknown, and one that in my eyes pays off. Just quickly, I thought I'd address one of the minor but recurring criticisms being brought up by fans, and that's the Scooby-Doo style chase sequence during the pre-titles. Since this story is framed as a story told by Elton, what we see is what he takes from situations. I'm not necessarily saying he's an unreliable narrator, but what we see is not necessarily a literal interpretation of what's happened. It could be strongly argued that Elton exaggerates and simplifies elements of what he sees. I mean, how bizarre would it be for anyone walking in halfway through a Doctor Who adventure? Plus, let's face it, the running down corridors aspect is self-parody, and I don't think anyone would suggest that this isn't something Doctor Who is akin to. The montage in which Elton is faced with previous alien attacks on London is a defining moment, an important step for New Who to have reached. We are now at a point in which the show can self-reference without going beyond the 2005 mark. It has now built its own pretty solid mythology which it can continue to riff off and add to, which is a considerable achievement that is overlooked now we're so far into the show's current run. But the Linda scenes are really what this story is all about. The fact that this episode is essentially a love letter to the fans, and not a love letter in the form of fan service and general fan-pleasing moments, but a love letter in the form of a well-placed mirror. Here, Russell T Davies acknowledges the fan base and the sort of people that make it up. When I first started making friends around the fandom, we'd talk about Doctor Who all the time, but as time went on, I found that we developed other chatting points and we learnt more about each other as people, and I found the best friends I've ever had from it. Doctor Who, for people like me, acts not just as a show that I love, but as an icebreaker for people I wouldn't usually talk to. People who I now know as great friends, although you'll probably know them as the FiveWhoFans, or pricks. This sequence of people coming together for one thing before learning more about each other is a beautifully executed reflection of this, and it gives their losses all the more impact when they go. Because let's face it guys, those people are us. Before we move on to the monster of the Absorbaloff himself, let us look at what leads up to his true physical reveal, and that is Victor Kennedy. I don't know what you guys think, but a few months ago when I was told how Kennedy is allegedly directly inspired by Ian Levine, I realised how stone cold brilliant it was. Kennedy is the fan that takes things too seriously, the fan who puts his own needs before everyone else's, the fan who, through manipulation and self-interest, ruins everyone's fun and destroys great friendships. And I can name one or two people like that. Once again, this is yet more evidence that this episode is for the fans and about the fans, and it's not in a teasing, nasty way, but in an understanding, sincere, and thought-provoking way. One of the strengths of this episode is its ability to blend both comedic and tragic themes. It might not be understood by some people who could suggest that the comedic aspects interfere with the storytelling, but the truth is that this is what life is like. You don't wake up one day in a brooding, dark thriller and spend the next in a sitcom. It's much more intricate than that, a theme that Love and Monsters explores aptly. Though he might seem a little wooden and jarring in his performance to some people, I'd say Mark Warren is channeling a sort of endearing innocence that allows him to be approachable and relatable as a character. Besides, he's an incredible actor, and although it's not unknown for half-assed performances to occur from high-status actors, especially in Doctor Who, nudge nudge wink wink, to me it's a standout performance. His final monologue at the end of the episode is so touching and truthful, as well as surprisingly dark for such a light-hearted episode, and I genuinely feel connected to him as a human being. As with all stories, there are a few gaps to be found, such as how Kennedy found out about and chose to hunt down the Doctor, but these are neither important or necessary. There are dozens of reasons as to why Kennedy could know about and want to take out the Doctor, but the gaps serve the story better than filling them in would. Do we really want 5 minutes of exposition? And just how important would it be for the plot? The central monster of the Absorbaloff is not quite as well realised as it could have been. Originally it was meant to be the size of a double-decker bus, but this is Doctor Who. It doesn't go high budget unless John Hurt's involved. I know a lot of Whovians are getting upset because this episode strays so far from being science fiction. Oh, you know, apart from the 3 aliens that feature. But the harsh reality for these people is that Doctor Who is not cold hard science fiction. It can and has delved into multiple genres at ease. Fantasy, comedy, thriller, historical period pieces. I mean, it's done all of these even before 2005. The only fault I can find in this story is the part in which the Doctor throws up some pointless exposition about the cane. Although it's part of the monster's original design, the story could have done without it. In fact, Elton's friends pulling the Absorbaloff apart without science fiction babble to do the cane might actually have been more suitable. One of the most upsetting criticisms people launch at this story is Ursula's fate. According to some, living as a sentient paving slab is worse than death, and it was cruel of the Doctor not to just put her out of her misery. Sorry, but this is bullshit. The point of the episode is that even as a paving slab, she can have a happy life because she's with people who love her. Also, the idea that Ursula should be dead because it's wrong to leave her alive is offensive. There are people in the real world who are physically unable to do much more than talk. Are their lives not worth living? Because that's a really slippery slope to go down, guys. This scene isn't a sad moment, and hey, if we want to go mad with this episode being a fandom metaphor, you could say lots of people we have meaningful relationships with are people who we see as just talking slabs. You know, communication on the internet, that thing, like Skype. Ursula's position doesn't make love, friendship, shared enthusiasm any less real, and the scene provides a really optimistic outlook on humanity. As for that supposed fellatio joke, it really isn't a big deal as people have been making out. Firstly, a love life doesn't have to involve fellatio. We could be talking heavy petting or passionate kissing. I mean, I don't want to go too much into what is regarded as sexual okay, I'm gonna stop now, this is quite uncomfortable. Secondly, if it does imply fellatio, it's subtle enough that children won't understand. I mean, I completely overlooked it and I was 12 when I first watched this. Stop obsessing over fellatio, guys. I need to stop saying fellatio. Love and Monsters is not just underrated, it is an overlooked gem that in years to come, people will come back to with a fresh, untainted perspective. This is, and I say this without a trace of sarcasm, one of my all-time favourite episodes of Doctor Who. And I hope that, if I haven't convinced people of Love and Monsters' merits, they might at least understand what there is to be liked about it. Just follow the central rule of Doctor Who, and you'll have a good time. That being that the hated stories are much better than what the bulk of the fandom perceives them to be, and the love stories are almost always disappointing and overrated. My examples for this review in that order? Love and Monsters and Blink.